Hello, and welcome to the SMART Fiscal Year 2018 Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program Application webinar. At this time, I'd like to introduce Laura Rogers, the Director of the SMART Office.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Rogers, Director of the Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking Office, and I welcome you to this webinar to provide guidance for the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Applications. As you know, the Adam Walsh Act is now over 11 years old. Title I of the Act laid out the requirements of the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, or SORNA. We now have 18 implemented states, 4 territories, and over 100 tribes, with most of the rest of the jurisdictions actively working towards implementation. So there is a shift from implementing SORNA to maintaining SORNA requirements and best practices, as well as incorporating newer requirements such as the 21-day international travel notice that the passage of International Megan's Law codified. We hope jurisdictions will use these funds to increase and improve the maintenance and sustainability of your program, as well as training and local support and regional and tribal efforts within your jurisdictions. Training those within your state, territory, or tribe is vital to information sharing and continued success of your sex offender registration and notification system. At this time, I will turn the webinar over to Amy Staubs, Grant Management Specialist, and Stephanie Carrig, Senior Policy Advisor, for specific guidance on the Fiscal Year 18 Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant.
Hello, this is Stephanie Carrig, Senior Policy Advisor for the SMART Office.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Amy Staubs, Grants Management Specialist in the SMART Office.
In this webinar, we will address the requirements of the Adam Walsh Act, or AWA, particularly Title I of the Adam Walsh Act, which is the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, or SORNA. We will discuss eligibility to apply for the AWA Implementation Grant, information about the award and its timeline, and the goals, objectives, and deliverables of the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. We will also discuss the process of preparing an application for the grant. The SMART Office, through the AWA Implementation Grant and other activities, assists jurisdictions with developing and enhancing programs designed to implement the requirements of SORNA. SORNA sets forth a comprehensive set of standards for the registration and notification of convicted sex offenders. It revised prior federal laws on sex offender registration and notification and, in so doing, closed gaps and loopholes that existed under those laws. Under SORNA, jurisdictions are required to maintain a sex offender registration and notification system that captures each registrable offender who resides, works, or attends school in the jurisdiction. SORNA went beyond prior federal laws by expanding the number of sex offenses that must be captured by registration jurisdictions. And, perhaps most importantly, SORNA expanded the definition of jurisdiction to include federally recognized Indian tribes, of whom most have elected to stand up their own registration and notification systems.
Eligible applicants for the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program include states, the District of Columbia, principal U.S. territories, and federally recognized Indian tribal governments that are eligible under SORNA Section 127 to carry out the functions of SORNA and that have elected to do so. Jurisdictions that have not previously received funding under this program are strongly encouraged to apply. Applicants may apply for up to $400,000 for a period of performance up to 36 months. This is something new under the solicitation. So applicants must clearly indicate their proposed project period up to the 36 months. Applications are due March 22nd, 2018. The AWA Grant Program goals, objectives, and deliverables include assisting jurisdictions with achieving substantial implementation of SORNA. We also expect applicants will be transitioning into maintaining and enhancing their SORNA implementation activities. Applicants may also look at planning for the sustainability of SORNA beyond funding.
The SORNA activities and strategies that the AWA grant could be used to develop or enhance are the items listed here. If you have any questions about possible strategies and activities during the application process, please contact our office. For states that have SORNA tribal jurisdictions, the state may apply for funding to enhance their collaboration with those jurisdictions. For example, the state may apply to support its efforts to provide the tribes with access to NCIC and SOR. In addition, to the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, regardless of whether that tribe is a SORNA tribal jurisdiction, the state may apply for funding to support those activities. An application to fund a collaborative approach or project must include supporting documentation, such as an interagency agreement, a memorandum of understanding, or a letter of cooperation that demonstrates the collaborative endeavor from each member SORNA jurisdiction involved in the collaboration. Likewise, to the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, the state should include a letter of support or cooperation and/or an MOU that indicates that the local jurisdiction or tribe is in agreement with and supportive of the proposed activities. In fiscal year 2018, applicants may propose activities related to safety training for SORNA personnel. Applicants are also encouraged to propose activities that support implementing and enforcing SORNA's 21-day advance notice of the international travel requirement. Tribes may also include community education and awareness activities that are listed here. If you have any questions about allowable activities, please contact your grant manager or your senior policy advisor. So now we'll transition into preparing your application. We'll now go through the parts of the application and their value in the application scoring process, starting with the description of the issue. Please remember that you are writing your application for peer reviewers who may not have intimate knowledge of your jurisdiction. Please use plain language to articulate your jurisdiction's status related to substantial implementation of SORNA, how the proposed activities are responsive to the most recent SORNA substantial implementation review, and provide current data on the number of sex offenders in your jurisdiction. The strongest applications also include discussion about the relationship your jurisdiction has with other sex offender registration offices in and around your jurisdiction. As part of your project narrative, all applicants are encouraged to link their proposed activities to deviations identified in their most recent SORNA substantial implementation review. Applicants must clearly describe the goals and objectives and what activities will be completed by the end of your project period. Applicants not yet substantially implemented must explain how proposed project activities bring the jurisdiction closer to implementation and the jurisdiction's SORNA implementation timeline. Your project narrative will also discuss the capabilities and competencies of your agency, making sure that you hit these target items here, as well as your plan for collecting required data and the performance measures, and other required items like indirect cost rates when those are applicable. For your budget detail worksheet, first remember that there is no match required under the Adam Walsh Act grant program. OJP has a new budget detail worksheet that is available that combines the calculations and the budget narrative into a single document. The worksheet is a user-friendly, fillable, Microsoft Excel-based document that helps calculate totals by multiple budget years as necessary. All applicants should use the Excel version of this form when completing the proposed budget. All costs proposed should correspond to the proposed goals, objectives, and deliverables, and it should be necessary and reasonable for the SORNA project activities. Indirect rates must have an attached unexpired indirect cost rate agreement to support that expense in your budget form. The application budget should clearly indicate any proposed subawards and procurement contracts that are anticipated under the award. When a proposed vendor name is available, please do include that name and the city and state where that vendor resides for any known subawards or procurement contracts in your application.
OJP offers a number of resources regarding subawards and procurement contracts under the OJP awards, and that guidance can be found on ojp.gov. There are a number of attachments that are required as part of your application package. Please be sure that the file name represents what that item is. For example, if it's a budget, file name should be budget. Indirect rate, again, make sure indirect rate is included in the file name. For the standard form 424, please be sure that the agency legal name, address, and authorized representative are accurately depicted on the form. The authorized representative should be the executive director or tribal leader, for example. The financial capability questionnaire that is included should have been completed within the past 2 years. A disclosure of pending applications is also required. Please note that funding will be withheld if that is not received as part of your application package. There's also a disclosure of lobbying activities. Any missing items from the application package may result in an application being denied or at very least delayed processing, and if awarded, oversight or lack of inclusion of these documents may delay your access to funds post-award. Attachments would also include position descriptions or resumes for any key personnel, a timeline that is realistic for your project plan, remember, going up to 36 months, your current indirect cost agreement, if that's applicable, and a current tribal authorizing resolution. So now we'll turn to generally allowable activities and costs under the AWA program. When proposing activities and costs, please first reference federal regulation, the OJP financial guide, and then the guidance that we provide here. Personnel, fringe, equipment, and supplies are all generally allowable under the AWA program. We've provided some examples of common things that are included in past awards under this program. When looking at equipment, please note that OJP's financial guide considers equipment to be any item with a per unit value over $5,000. You may also include travel, a variety of travel costs under your grant application. These may include SORNA-specific training for any personnel, as well as conferences or technical assistance meetings, jurisdiction-wide trainings and events, SORNA working group-related travel, and mileage that may be required in your verification activities. Please note that gas and fuel are not an allowable expense. Instead, you should be listing mileage based on GSA mileage rates. There are a number of subawards and contracts that may also be allowable under the award. These would include vehicle leases, professional services, to include legal support, IT development and compliance specialists, consulting activities, but please be sure that any of these services don't duplicate services that may be available from SMART-funded training and technical assistance providers. Whenever using procurement contracts or consultants, please be sure that you are using established agency guidelines for competitive procurement process. Additional documentation may be required at the time of your application for any sole source vendor agreements that are over $150,000. Other costs may include rental space, software, utilities, officer identification and visibility materials, and conference registration fees. Tribes participating in the Tribal Access Program may also include materials that address specific requirements with regard to taking vendor photographs, such as specific paint and lighting. All of these would be considered allowable costs under the AWA program. Unallowable activities and costs would include construction, food and beverage, gift cards or prepaid phone cards, stipends of any sort, and gasoline or fuel and maintenance of vehicles. Vehicle insurance is also an unallowable cost. Please submit your application package through grants.gov under this opportunity number as provided here on the slide. Applications are due March 22nd. Applicants must register through grants.gov prior to submitting the application. We suggest that you register several weeks before the due date as noted in the solicitation on page 23. OJP urges applicants to submit an application at least 72 hours prior to the due date. If you experience technical issues with submission via grants.gov, follow the guidance in the solicitation to contact the grants.gov help desk and the solicitation point of contact on page 1 of the solicitation.
Here is a list of resources and tools available to all registration jurisdictions. SMART.gov is the SMART Office's official website and includes several tools to assist jurisdictions in their efforts to implement SORNA, including a checklist and the other items listed here. The Drew Shadeen National Sex Offender Public Website, or nsopw.gov, is a public website that enables the public to simultaneously search all registration jurisdictions' public registry websites. The SORNA Exchange Portal is a web-based tool that the SMART Office created. The portal facilitates various communications between registration jurisdictions, most notably, notifications between jurisdictions regarding sex offender relocation. The Sex Offender Registry Tool, or SORT, provides the local registration agencies with their own specialized public sex offender registry websites and can function as the state-level administrative registry system. The Sex Offender Management Assessment and Planning Initiative, or SOMAPI, is a large-scale project designed to assess the state of research and practice in sex offender management. There are also many resources and tools that our office has designed specifically for the tribal jurisdictions. The Tribal and Territory Sex Offender Registry System, or TSORS, is the tribal counterpart to SORT and functions as the jurisdiction-level registry system. TSORS also includes a customizable public website for the jurisdiction. The Tribal Access Program is a Department of Justice program that supports tribes in analyzing their needs for national crime information, and it helps to provide appropriate solutions, including a biometric biographic computer workstation with capabilities to process finger and palm prints, take mugshots, and submit records to national databases, as well as accessing CJIS systems such as NSOR for criminal and civil purposes. The Native American Sex Offender Management Project, or NASAM, seeks to identify and develop existing resources for the treatment, management, and reentry of American Indian and Alaska Native adult and juvenile sex offenders who are returning to tribal lands. The Model Tribal Code assists tribes in developing or updating existing sex offender registration legislation to meet SORNA requirements. The Guide on SORNA Implementation in Indian Country provides registry personnel with information needed to assist in efforts towards implementing SORNA. SORNA tribal training and technical assistance is also available to assist tribes in these efforts. If you have any questions, please call or email our office at the information listed here. Thank you for listening. We hope that this information has been helpful, and we look forward to reading your applications.